Welcome everyone to the Play Guitar Podcast. How you doing today? This is our live taping of the show. This is the long form content. So if you've got a while to hang around, we'd love to have you hang out with us. If you're looking for something a little bit shorter, all these pieces of information are going to be condensed down into separate videos over the next couple of days. Just check the playlist there. So let's see here. I'm getting everything set up as we go. Just got tuned up. And I'd like to check the chat before we get started. Get my microphone going here. And we have, let's see who we got. We've got Chris is here. And Chris was first. And Kevin. Hey, Kevin. Good to see you. Who else do we got? Evan's here. Hey, Evan and Coke. Great to see you, man. Great to see you. We are. We're going to be talking about ninth chords today. We're going to start off talking about what extended chords are in the first place. Give a little bit of background theory to that, and then after we get that going, we're going to focus on ninth chords, and we're going to take some common chords that we use, common shapes that everybody knows, and we are going to make minor changes to them so we can get all sorts of cool sounds. Oh, I just saw Matt pop in. Good to see you, Matt. Good to see everybody. And if someone in the chat could give me a 1, let me know that the audio's coming through okay and everything looks all right. I'd appreciate that. I'm going to get my notes going here in just a second. All right. And then I got to get the get our theme song up here, and then we're going to be in business. I hope everybody's day is going well. Mine has been going pretty good today. Oh, goodness. Oh, one of those days when everything doesn't want to go your way. I'm have to load up the intro real quick. It vanished on me. Okay, so I've got that loaded up. Dock everything to the side here. We'll check the chat real quick, make sure we're coming through. Okay, I got some 1s. Awesome. That is good news. Good news. All right. So we'll get started in just a second. Here we go. Okay. Guitar's working. All right. Let's go. Oh, got to press record on everything. I caught it. Before. I missed it. Okay. All right. Lots of plates spinning here. Let's take the first step into more colorful chords using the ninth. Today I'll explain what ninth chords are, how they're constructed, and all the different types you can play to fancy up your rhythm guitar. So stay tuned. What do you think? I think we're going to do that one over. That was bad. All right, let's try that one more time. Let's take the first step to more colorful chords using the ninth. Today I'll explain what ninth chords are, how they're constructed, and all the different types you can use to fancy up your rhythm playing. So stay tuned. Hello and welcome, friends, to episode 130 of the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that will help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. Welcome. We're going to be having some fun today. We're talking about ninth chords, and in particular ninth chords, but in general, we're going to have some extended chord theory. And don't get scared off by theory. I don't like to teach, pitfalls. I don't want to go into the deep end of theory right there. But we're going to just know enough to make us dangerous. Just know enough so that we can get functional on the guitar and take the things that we already know, the chord shapes we already know, and change them slightly to get a lot more to get better, more ornate chords and some different colors in our playing. That's what I was trying to talk about. So what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about the progression of learning chords. Some people come into chords and they just learn a few chords and they think, okay, I'm good to go. I can play a few songs. But then they never progress any farther. They never move on to the next step. And we're going to try and bust through that today. And some of the way that you bust through that is by taking a step back and looking at, well, what's the actual process I need to do to be able to learn chords? Which one should I learn first? And then the next one, and the next one. How do I move through this series of chords and learn them in a way that we build our knowledge? So we're going to talk about, well, first, everyone learns the open chords. They call them cowboy chords. Lots of different types of open position chords is what we've got. And you learn that, you see your cage chords and your minor chords and a few seventh chords. But after that, you start to realize, well, hey, I can't play a lot of the songs that I want with these chords. People try the capos, move those chords around on the guitar, but some of these ideas that you're hearing, some of these sounds that you're hearing require something else, and that's bar chords. So usually you move from your open position chords to your bar chords. And at first it's just a power chord could do, but then you start to realize, I need my major chords, I need my minor chords, and I need some seventh chords sprinkled in there. And at some point you get comfortable with that and you can play a lot of songs, but you start to hear something else, some other chords, some chords that you're not quite sure how to get those sounds. And if you did know how to play those chords, you're not really sure how to use them. And so they're called extended chords. Now, the chords that we've learned, major, minor, augmented, diminished, and then our seventh chords, major seventh chords, minor seventh chords, dominant seventh chords, they're still our foundation. And a lot of these fancier chords are still doing the same job that the basic chords that we've learned are doing. They're just doing them dressed up a little bit with a different sound to them. And so today, when we go through these chords, we're going to build them all from some chords that we already know, some chords that we're very comfortable playing, and making some minor changes to these chords. One in particular I think I'm going to use for the whole thing because it really shows you, and for the people listening in the audio podcast, that this is a chord that you remember. Everyone goes through this chord. I'm going to make some very slight changes to it, and we're going to get a lot of different cool sounds. And they're going to function in the same way as the chords that we already know. So let's go ahead and take a little break. I'm going to check the chat just to make sure everything's going smooth here. So I had the ones before. Chris says, how to walk with kids and the family dog, then good food and lots of guitar, and now the podcast. Good day. Good day. That's right. So Dean's here. Hey, Dean. Chris said, nailed it the second time like a boss, right? Man, what are you going to do? I could have just left the first one in there, and then the whole podcast I'd be thinking, I needed to redo that first one. This is live. It happens. And Evan says, now I'm trying my hand at songwriting. It seems like theory is more important than ever. Yeah, it backs everything up. Everything up. So, okay, so it looks like we're doing good. I'm going to move on to our first section here. So topic number 1, what are extended chords? Well, to know what extended chords are, we are going to have to build some very small ideas to get a decent foundation to understand that. So we're going to have a 30-second quick mini course on chord theory. The first thing that you've heard me say it, I keep saying it. What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first, the scale or the chords? The scale came first. Always the scale. We get everything from the scale. In particular, we get everything from the major scale. The do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can make a case in anything that you're playing in Western music that it can boil back down to that scale. And in particular, not just the scale, but the way that scale is made up. It's made up of distances, whole steps and half steps. Whole step is 2 frets on the guitar. Half step is 1 fret on the guitar. To make a major scale, you take a whole step, another whole step, then a half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, running out of room, half step. Okay? Whole, half, whole, half. Everything boils down to that. And once you understand that, and we can start manipulating this relationships for the major scale, then we can start getting all sorts of other things. But the important part of that is for each note in that scale, when you go, say on the piano, the white keys, that's whole, half, whole, half. If you start at a C and end at a C, it puts all of those intervals in order. And what we do is we number each one of those notes to be able to use a lot of the theory that we're wanting to learn to our advantage. So in that case, C would be the first note. We call it 1. Second note would be D, that's 2. E would be 3. F, 4. G, 5. A, 6. B, 7. And then back to C, which is our octave, which we call it 8. And that's the bottom floor of getting into this. And it's very powerful. It's very important to understand this. But it's the bottom floor of getting into why the music, the things that we use to play music work. That's, once you understand why something works, you can use that in many different ways. You can take advantage of that. So we're building chords from this scale pattern. Quickly, how you build chords is you skip every other note. You find a starting note and then jump notes. Those notes that you jump to, those are the other notes in your chord. For example, with the key of C on the piano, if you had a C, skip 1, you get to an E, and skip another one, you get to a G. C, E, and G, that's your major scale. Those are the notes. So every other note thing works, and we've planned out all of our scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're jumping notes. 1, 3, 5. That's called a triad. 3 notes. It's our major chord. But we can keep going from that. And you know, the once you get your major and minor chords down, the next thing is 7th chords. And people think, well, what's a 7th chord? Well, you jump 1, 3, 5. Well, if you jumped one more time, what would you jump to? 7. So this chord has 4 notes in it. 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7. So starting on C, it'd be C, E, G, B. That's a major 7th chord. A major triad with the 7th degree of the scale added in on that from the scale. And we use 7th chords. They have a wonderful function. There's the major 7th we just talked about. You can flat that, make it a dominant 7th, and that has more of a unsettled sound. There's a minor 7th chord, which in C would be C, E flat, G, B flat, and they function slightly different than triads. And they have a good sound to them. And there are a ton of songs that you have heard, most likely you've learned, have 7th chords in them. And that gets you started. That gets you going in songs. If you know your triads and you know your 7th chords, you know your open position chords and some bar chords, you're going, man. You're playing songs. Now we're caught up to where we were talking before. We want to go further. There's more chords out there. We can hear them. Your ear has developed at this point where you know, I'm not playing everything that's out there. There are some other chords that I've heard in songs that I'm not playing. What are those chords? Well, what did we do before? How did we get from a triad to a seventh chord? We jumped another note. Well, we're doing extended chords now. Why don't we just do the same thing? Continue that. So an extended chord is where you continue to jump and continue to skip notes past your functional notes. And the functional notes are the ones that we've talked about: the first, the third, the fifth, and the seventh degree of the scale. Different combinations of those notes give you a happy sound, a sad sound, an unsettled sound, a pretty sound, and they're functional. They do the job. But as we continue to jump, the next notes that we go to are, and not less important, but they're less functional. If you change those notes, they don't really change the character of what the chord does, so much as it changes the paint, so much as it changes the way that the chords are colored. And I don't know. Some people are very happy with just sticking with major and minor chords, and some people, they really want to get these fancier sounds. It depends on your style of playing and what you like. But this is what we're getting into today. Extended chords is taking the chords that function the way we already know they do and dressing them up a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go through the notes. So we started on one. We jumped from the first note to the third note, and the third note to the fifth note. That's our C major triad, C, E, and G. And then we decided we wanted to do a seventh chord. So from the G, our last note, we're going to jump one more. So C, jump D, go to E. E, jump F, go to G. So G is going to jump A, and it's going to go to B. So now we have our seventh chord. Those are the four notes we need to play a seventh chord. Once we jump from there, we're out of functional chord territory. So we're at the seventh. If we jump the next one, we're going to call it the eighth. Even though the first note and the eighth note are the same note, they're both C's in this case. Since we started on one, once we get to the octave, we're going to call it 8 for the octave, right? So we're going to jump 8 from 7, and we're going to go to, where will we go? If you jump 8, you go to 9. So let's count up. C would be 8. D, the next note above it, would be 9. So we already had a D, right? In the beginning, when we jumped, the very first note we jumped, C, we jumped the D and go to E. That was the second degree of the scale. So the ninth degree of the scale and the second degree of the scale, they're the same note. And notice when we're jumping in this next, we'll call it the next octave, right? So we've gone through our first 8 notes jumping. Now we're jumping into the next octave. These notes here, they happen to be the notes that we've already skipped. So we're using all of the notes of the scale. All those notes that we jumped over are now showing up in our extended chords. So now we've got C, E, G, B, D. That is the ninth. Okay? So we're going to be using this D note with our regular chords to get some different sounds. But we can go farther from that. That's not the only extended type chord, a ninth chord that we have. What would happen if we jumped again? So if we went from D, which is our ninth, we would jump, the next note is an E, we're going to jump E and go to an F. So with 9, jump 10, go to 11, right? So there's our 11th note. So if we had our first, our third, our fifth, our seventh, our ninth, and now our 11th, you would have some sort of 11th chord. You've seen that, something C11. Here here or there, right? So we've got ninth chords, we've got 11th chords. Can we stop there? We could, but there's one more that we can get to. What would that be? So we're at 11, which is our, we jumped from D, jumped to E, over E, went to F. F is our 11th in the key of C. So we're going to jump a G now and go to an A. That would be our 13th. So a 13th chord could have, although we don't have enough strings on the guitar for it, the first, the third, the fifth, the seventh, the ninth, the 11th, and the 13th. In the key of C, it would be C, E, G, B, D, F, A. Big chord, right? The notes we started with, those are the functional important notes. And then the notes we ended with, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th, they add color to it. So you dress up these chords. Still functions the same way, but it's got a different quality to it. So in the next sections, we're going to take our first step and we're going to make very small changes, a note here or there, to a shape that we already know, and we're going to get tons of new sounds. And it's going to make sense from what we just talked about. We're just taking notes from the scale and jumping every other note. Okay. All right. Let me go check the chat. Make sure everybody's still with me here. All right. Evan says, now try my, okay. And Chris says, just meant it was a lot better second time, Lee. Worth getting right. Right? That's right. Okay, so we've established the a little bit of theory, how to think about chords and how to think about building chords. So now we're going to do little close-ups of the guitar and take a chord that we already know, make some changes, and get all these different ninth chords. And we're going to go through all the different ninth chords there. And I just want to say to everybody before we go, I really had a great time going through the videos this week. A lot of really cool stuff, a lot of improvement, even in a week or two for a few people too. So had a little problem with the when I uploaded my videos with some copyright things before they were even posted from some of the videos that we've had. So we're gonna have to deal with that this week sometime. I took care of it. It either cut that section out of the coaching videos or muted the audio. Supposedly, it's was to do that. So just let you guys know that while we're going. All right. So I'm going to go into part 2. Part 2, major ninth, and minor ninth chords. So we're going to talk a little bit about naming specific ninth chords. It can get a little confusing. In general, seventh chords can be a little confusing too, before you even get to ninth chords. So with seventh chords, we have a major seventh chord, and that's the notes right from the major scale. That's right from the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale. That's C, E, G, B, right? And it's a pretty kind of sounding chord. Then in seventh chords, excuse me, let me fix this for a second here. Then in seventh chords, we have a minor seventh chord. And that'd be a C, E flat, G, B flat. We have flatted the third, and we have also flatted the seventh. Right? So we have that E flat and B flat in there with the C and the G. Then we had the dominant seventh chord. And the dominant seventh chord is just like a major seventh, but we take that seventh note and flat it one. So it's C, E, G, B flat. And that's kind of that funky sound that you hear in blues and funk music, those things. So we're going to take that idea of seventh chords and apply that to ninth chords as well. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the ninth, the major ninth, and the minor ninth. Let's talk about the ninth. When you see something written C9, it is just like a seventh chord. When you see C7, that means dominant seventh or a flat seventh chord. I don't know how it got to be that way, but that's standard. So when you see C7, it means you have a flat seventh, a dominant seventh chord. Same thing with the ninth. When you see a C9, that means you have a dominant seventh chord with a ninth on top of it. And we're going to show all of the notes and how to make that in just a second. But then you see something called a major ninth chord. It's the same thing as a major seventh chord. Everything's straight from the major scale. So a major ninth would have a C, E, G, B, D. No alterations. We're not flatting or sharpening anything. So a major ninth comes right from there. And then the minor ninth, just like the minor seventh chord, has the minor seventh, C, E flat, G, B flat, and then the D there. So these are our three big ninth chords, and that's how you name them. So I'm going to go ahead and switch cameras, and we'll get a close-up here. But before I do, what we're going to find out, one thing we're going to see is sometimes on the guitar, you don't have enough strings to get every single note in a chord. Or sometimes you might not want to. Sometimes you might just want to have a small chord. You might just pick 4 strings, which is what we're going to use today, just 4 strings. Well, what do? What happens if you know in that chord you have 5, 6 notes in the chord, but you only have 4 strings to work with? What do? Well, it's a common practice to leave out 2 of the notes that won't change the way the chord works. And that is the root note and the fifth. At any time, you can leave those 2 notes out and the chord will still function exactly the same. The root note surprises a lot of people. Because we think so much about how to build chords, we think about the root note first. Where's the root note? And then we can do our shape from there. Well, most times, if you're playing in a group, someone is going to be covering the root note, usually the bass player or the piano player. So usually if someone else is playing the root note, your job doesn't really require you to play that. It may be, you could hear it from another instrument, or it may be implied as well. So at any time we can leave out our root note and the fifth. The third you wouldn't want to leave out because the third determines whether it's major or minor, happy or sad. But the fifth they call it the perfect fifth. It has a strong, powerful sound, but it doesn't change the quality of the chord so much. So it's very easy to leave out. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to the close-up. And for those of you who are watching, get everything situated here real quick. And we're going to build a 9th chord. I'm going to take the shape of an F. This is what we're going to build on. Now I'm going to play as a C. I'm going to play it up at the 8th fret. But it's that shape of the F on the top 4 strings, not the bar chord F that everyone struggles with, the one that you played before. So your first finger is barring the top 2 strings, the E and the high E and the B, and then your second finger is 1 fret up on the G string, and then your third finger is 1 fret up on the D string. Most of us have played this before. Now I'm going to keep this all in C to make it easy. I'm going to play this up at the 8th fret. Okay, so here is our C major chord, and it's in this shape, just like the half of an F chord. And we're going to take this shape, and we're going to go through all of the different ninths. In this section, the major ninth, the minor ninth, and the dominant ninth, and just make very small changes to it. Okay, so when we talked about the major ninth chord, we had a C, an E, a G, and then we had a B. That's a major 7th. And then to make it a ninth, we would use a D note. Okay, so somehow from this chord, we need to add a B note and a D note. Okay, we'll start from our triad. Well, we know that we can get rid of our root note. It's not so important. And the B, the seventh, is directly behind it. So I'm going to take my third finger that's on the D string and lower it 1. Now we're into major seventh territory. That added our major seventh. If you wanted to put a note on the low E string at C, there we go. Okay, so there's our major seventh. Now, to make it a ninth chord, we have to add a D. Well, we have a D right here on the 10th fret on the high E string where my pinky is. And it will cover up another one of our root notes, which is one of the notes that we can leave out. At this point, we've taken the low note of that F and lowered it 1, and the high note of that F chord and raised it a whole step, 2 frets. And we have our major ninth chord. It's very pretty. How does it function? It functions just like the seventh chord, the major seventh. But when you add that ninth, you hear the difference? Very pretty sound. Okay, so there's our major ninth. Now you can go to our Facebook group. I'm going to put up tomorrow morning when this comes out. I'm going to put up a bunch of chord diagrams for different ninth chords. So you can check that out over in the Facebook group tomorrow. Our next chord is going to be a minor ninth. So let's start with our F shape again. Okay? And in a minor ninth chord, we're going to have a first, a flat third, a fifth, a flat seventh, and then the ninth. So that in the key of C, that would be C, E flat. So I'm going to take my third here and lower it 1. Okay? So, and then we have a G, and then a B flat, or I'll lower it down there, get rid of the root down there, and then the D. So what I've done is I've taken my lowest note on that F shape, lowered it down 2, so that's my root going to the flat seventh. On the G string, I'm going to lower that 1. That's my third going to a minor third. The fifth stays the same, and then the D covers up the root note on the top string. So basically, you're barring at the 8th fret with your pinky 2 frets up on the high E string. So here's just a minor chord, minor seventh. Here's a minor ninth. And here's another place you could play a minor ninth down here. Very neat sounding chord. Functions just like a minor seventh chord, but a very different quality, right? And we didn't do much. We just took those chords that we already know, changed a few notes with the information that we had. Let's try one more. Let's try to take our regular old F shape here up at the 8th fret, and we're going to make a ninth chord, meaning a dominant ninth chord. So we're going to take our C, E, G, B flat, and then we also need a D. There's 2 ways you could do this. You could take your root note and lower it down 2 to get our flat seventh in there, our B flat, and then take your root note on the high string and raise it 2 to get the ninth. So we basically got rid of both of the roots, but we also can get rid of the fifth as well. So we could take get our flat seventh on the low string, keep our third the same, and then on the B string where we have our G, we can raise that up to a B flat, and then use our third finger to get our D on the high string to give a very, very different sound. Okay. you can always do the James Brown chord because that's the same chord. It's a ninth, a C9, which means a dominant ninth. So just from taking a few notes, once you understand here, so just from taking a chord shape that we know, changing a few of the notes and plugging in our ninth and changing the qualities of maybe the third or omitting the fifth or whatever, we can get some different sounds from a very easy chord shape. Okay, I'm going to take a break now before we move on to the next common ninth, the lesser common ninth chords, and check the chat real quick. If everybody's in the chat still, if we're still going, please let me know, because my chat seems to have frozen. Let me check on my phone real quick. Make sure I can see it. This happens sometimes here. So we're just going to make sure everybody can still see me. I'm trying. Okay, so Chris, okay, I got one for Chris. Good. Okay, so we're in business. So I'm going to show some even cooler chords that you can get with this F shape in just a minute or two. All right, let's head on over back. So Chris is just working away on those chords. Okay, everybody's here. That's good. All right, just wanted to make sure everything was still rolling. Okay, so I've got one more section to go, and that is some less common ninth chords. Okay, section 3, some less common ninth chords. I've got 3 more chords for you that could be really, really interesting to play in the right situation. They're not as common as the 3 that we talked about in the last section, but they're very useful and very cool sounding. And those 3 chords are the dominant 7 flat 9 chord, and then we also have the add 9 chord, and then the minor 6/9 chord. Now, all 3 of those are chords that I use. They're all very cool chords, and they're all very easy to create from that same F shape that I've been showing you in the last section. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's start with the 7 flat 9 chord. So whenever you see a 7th chord, that implies dominant 7. We've talked about that in both sections before. So in the key of C, we'd have C, E, G, and a B flat. Okay? Now, the rest of that chord says it's a 7 flat 9 chord. So that's going to mean basically what it says. We're going to take that ninth in the key of C, that's a D note, and we're going to lower it 1 to D flat. Okay, so we're going to make a C7 chord, and we're going to add a D flat to it. Very easy to do. Let's take a close up here. So here's our regular C at the 8th fret. We're going to make it a dominant chord. We do that by taking the D string and lowering it 2 frets. There's our C7. Okay, and now what we have is a 9th chord. So we have our D. We're going to lower that 1. It should look familiar, especially to my coaching students. two coaching students in particular, right? It's exactly the same as a diminished 7th chord when you get rid of the root note. When you take the C and raise it 1 to the flat 9. In fact, they are switched between. A lot of times, you will see you will see it written both ways. You'll see a flat 9, 7 flat 9 chord written as a diminished 7th chord. It's just a C 7 flat 9 without the root Same notes as a diminished 7th chord. And they repeat every 3 frets. Neat chord. You use that for tension. For this D flat note likes to resolve down to a C. Very, very neat chord. It can be substituted for any kind of dominant 7th chord, and in the right situation, it sounds phenomenal. In some, it sounds very, very dissonant because of that flat 9 there. It's a half step above the root. But let's go to our next chord. This is one that you probably have seen in a lot of songs, and this is the add 9 chord. And the add 9 chord, what we do is we take our C, our E, our 3rd, our 5th is G. And what makes it different than a regular 9 chord is we don't use the 7th. We're not skipping again. We would skip past that. So we're going to have a 9th note in the key of C is a D. And we're going to have that with just the triad, just the C, E, and G. So it's C, it's 1, 3, 5, no 7th, and the 9th. Now this one's really easy to play on the guitar. You take that F shape in the key of C that's up on the 8th fret and just add your pinky on the high E string 2 frets up. That's our add 9 chord. It's that 9th note, and we don't use a 7th. We just add it to the triad. Pretty neat sound. A lot of people are used to an add 9 when they play in the key of G. The 4-finger G goes to a C add 9 a lot of times. You hear that in a lot of different songs. But the next thing that you can do with that, and most people only ever use the major add 9, you can also do it as a minor add 9. How we do that? We take a minor triad. In this case, it would be C, E, G. We take our G string note on this F shape and lower it 1, and then we add we take the high string and make that C into a D. There's our minor add 9. Basically, it's a minor triad, not a 7th chord, just a regular minor chord, but we put the 9th note in there. So that's our minor add 9. C, E flat, G, D. So all these chords so far, they're just small alterations to this F shape that we've been doing. It's super simple. You just have to understand what each note does and make the changes according to that. But there's one I would like to go over before we go. I have one last chord, and this is called the 6/9 chord. And this one you can as well have a major or a minor 6/9 chord. And what is that? So if we take a look here, we have a C, our first note, our 3rd note, which is E, and our 5th note, which is G. That's our major triad, right? And for the 6/9 chord, we're not going to use the 7th either. We're done skipping for that. But what we are going to use is just like the name says. We're going to use the 6th and the 9th. We already know the 9th is a D, right? So we have C, E, G, and we have some sort of D we have a D in there, but we also need to put the 6th. So what's the 6th degree of C major? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an A. Okay? So we need to be able to put an A and a D, an A and a D in with our regular C major chord. So we take our 1st, our 3rd, and our 5th. It's easy to get the D, so we've already done it in all these other chords. We take the high E string from the 8th note and bring it up 2 frets. So that's our add 9 chord at this point, and we need to add an A to it. So we're going to get rid of our fifth. We talked in the beginning about you can get rid of the root and get rid of the fifth. So the fifth in this instance is on the B string, and we're playing a G with our first finger at the 8th fret of the B string. We're going to raise that up 2 frets to an A at the 10th fret. Now this is a really, really, really cool chord. It will replace a major chord. So it'll function just like a C major chord with a lot of color to it. Let's build one here off of where the James Brown chord sits in C, which is down by the 2nd and 3rd fret. So we're going to use the C at the 3rd fret of the A string, the E at the 2nd fret of the D string. Now we're going to put our A, our 6th degree of the scale, on the G string of the 2nd fret, just kind of bar across there. And then we're going to finish off with our 9th, which is the D that's on the B string at the 3rd fret. We can actually, we got rid of the 5th to pull this chord off, but we do have an extra string here where we could put a G up top. Very neat chord. I like to end songs with that. So if it's not, if you've got a big finish to a major sounding song, a 6/9 chord is a pretty neat chord to substitute right there at the end. Okay, so there we go. We talked about what extended chords are. We got a very tiny music theory lesson, just enough to get us dangerous, to get us started on there. And then with section 2, we talked about the main 9th chords. The 9th that's dominant, the major 9th, and then the minor 9th. And in this last section, we talked about some less common 9th chords, but they're very cool sounding. And that was the 7/9 chord, the add 9 chord, both major and minor, and then we just finished up with the minor 6/9. The 6/9 chords. We just finished up with the 6/9 chords, both the major and the minor. So that gives you a lot of different sounds that you can get just taking an F shape on the guitar and changing a few notes. And then we talked about the reasons you would use those chords and the best place to use those chords in place of functional chords that you already know. Okay, so just want to let you know that if I've got diagrams for bunch of different types of 9th chords in different places on the guitar, and I'm going to make those available at the Facebook group. That's at playguitargroup.com, and you can head over there, sign up, go in, and they should be pinned to the top probably by this evening. And I'm looking forward to hearing some 9th chords and seeing what you guys can do with them, and I hope that you understood how to construct them and the best way to use them. Okay, everybody, that was a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and call it for today. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Also, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a review for the show. If you're just starting or you're new to guitar, head over to Start Here Guitar. Check out my premium 11-week beginner's course that will give you the foundation you need to move forward correctly on the guitar. Follow me on all my different social media pages. Links to them are at playguitaracademy.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode. I did it. I went through it. Awesome. So what'd you think, guys? Were you familiar with 9th chords before? Did you like the way any of those sounds? Could you see yourself playing any of those in some of the songs that you're working on? Matt Sullivan says, "Whoa, I've been gripping the minor 7/9 differently, and it's way easier least way." Yeah, there's lots of different ways of doing it. And once you kind of open the guitar neck up and start to see where different notes are, you can make wherever your hand is on the guitar, you can make any of these chords. I just did it here on this easy shape so that people can not feel intimidated and not feel like you have to play it all over the guitar. At some point, you will, but this is a first step. And so the whole point of this podcast is to introduce extended chords. And I'm going to do more. I'm going to do an 11th chord podcast. I'm also going to do 13th chord podcast. So my goal is for people who are looking at like lead sheets or trying to learn some songs and that come across these chord names that are unfamiliar, that you won't be so not terrified by them, but you wouldn't want to avoid them like most people do. When you see, most people will just play the letter and hope for the best, right? So add 9 chords. We've all played a little add 9 chord, but I don't think a lot of people understand how that comes about and what the best place is to use that from. Chris says, love the 6/9 chord. Killer. Yeah, it's a neat chord, man. It's very different. Matt was talking about the 7/9 chord. Kevin says, solid chord lesson. Awesome. Yeah, and if some of this, for people who have just started, some of this may be a little too much for you, go back and listen to the first section, the extended chords. And that's a really ground floor theory lesson about chord theory. It's a really it's a really great first step into thinking about these things. Well, how are these chords built up? How do we make these chords? Why am I putting my hands in these shapes? I know everybody's telling me that a D looks like this. Well, why? Why does it look like this? And once you know why, you can start to use the notes in the D chords and do things with them that really make some neat music. And it gives you confidence when you're playing chords. You're not just like, whoa, if I get off by a fret, the whole song's done, right? You can get back on the train again if you mess up. Like if I'm playing in a chord and I get distracted and I all of a sudden I've lost my place, because I understand how chords work. And if I know, okay, when a couple measures I've got that whatever chord is coming in there, I can quickly make that chord in the area that I'm playing, where my hand is right there. So anyway, this is a first step, and I know for some of you it's going to be something good to kind of sink your teeth into, and I think for others of you, you might think, I kind of get it, but I'm not there yet. Keep going over that first section, and it'll make sense to you soon. So let's see here. Chris said, I know the basic 9th chord, but just see add 9 full shape, right? Hopefully you can see. My hope for this is that you can see how I took a shape and figured out what the notes in that shape were, and with a little bit of knowledge was able to manipulate them. No matter where your hand is, no matter what chord shape, it gives you options. You always have options, and the more you understand about this, the more control you have over your rhythm guitar and the sounds that you use. And it's really exciting. It doesn't sound exciting at first, but when you can take advantage of just doing something simple like I did today, when you can take advantage of it, your rhythm guitar playing goes up to the next level, And Chris said that 6/9 moved around the neck sounds awesome. Yeah, moving it around. Yeah, it's some cool stuff, man, and it's not difficult. You just have to know a few things, and then you're playing stuff that other people go, whoa, what was that? And you can tell them it's not difficult. It looks difficult, but it's not. and picking out the notes, and it was explained. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. This is something I've wanted to do for a while, and what I had been struggling with was what's the best way to present it, and that F shape kind of it took until I found that F shape, so where everything, all the different chords worked nicely right there. So I'm pretty happy with. I don't know how I presented it, but I'm pretty happy with the thinking behind this. So, okay, everybody, that's the Monday. That's the live podcast. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Thank you, Chris, and Kevin, and Matt, and Bud. Man, hey Bud, good to see you. Let's see here, Dean, good to see you, man. And Evan keeps freezing. He's still out of town and didn't get good service. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Evan, man. I hope you were able to see some of it. Just watch back later on when you get back. Coke, great to see you, Coke. Yeah, and if I missed anybody else, but thank you for hanging out. If anyone who has been watching and isn't in the chat, I really appreciate you hanging out with us, and look forward to seeing everyone on Friday when we get back to it and start this all up again. Everybody have a great rest of your week, okay? All right. Bye-bye, everybody.